Shabbat Shalom. Well, it is great to see everyone tonight. Welcome to Sabbath Collective. We're a community of people interested in celebrating the Sabbath and pursuing God through a Hebraic worldview of the Bible. As Dr. King reminds us, we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. But first, we're going to open our time with the lighting of the Shavuos candles. Now, traditionally, the mothers light the candles, and these connect us, these Sabbath candles connect us to the light of peace, of joy, and of unity. And hopefully this one will light. It's messing with me tonight. And then she encircles the candles with her hands 3 times. And what that is it's a gesture that welcomes in the Sabbath. And so she welcomes in the Sabbath by encircling 3 times. And then she prays as she covers her eyes from the flame as a symbol of ending all work. Blessed are you, Yahweh our God, King of the universe, who has set us apart by his commandments, who has given us Yeshua the Messiah, and has sent us to be a light to the world. The Lord is our light and our salvation. May his light be felt in this space as the enlightenment of truth and the radiance of joy. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good to see you. We're going to really talk about a very necessary topic tonight, and that is, what does hope look like? Psalm 71 verse 5 says, "For you are my hope," and that's the Hebrew word tikva, Adonai Elohim. For you are my tikva. Now, there are several Hebrew words used in scriptures with different nuances for hope. And unfortunately, in our English Bibles, they are all usually translated into the same word, hope, which is unfortunate, because then we sort of lose the variations and the nuances and the depths of meanings. But I want to look today at one of the many Hebrew words used for hope, and that is the word tikva. And what tikva means is an expectation. Tikva means expectation. And as you know, before there were Hebrew letters, there were Hebrew pictographs. And the pictographs can really give us some great insight into the meanings or the elements of the word. So the word tikva is tav, and tav is actually, it looks like a cross, and what it means is it's the sign of covenant. The second letter we see is the letter kuf. And that means, actually, that's a picture of a sun setting. And what that means is revolution or circle or time. The next letter we see is the letter Yud, which is the actual picture of an arm. And what that means is to work or to make or to throw. And then the last letter we see is the letter He, and it means behold, a great sight. And it actually has to do with the breath, because hay sounds like breath. So it has to do with, it's such a great sight that it takes your breath away. In the word tikva, which is the Hebrew word for hope, we see through all these letters the meaning of expectation, and we see all the elements of a sign, a revolution, creating, working, revealing. Tikva is often also translated as a literal cord or rope. And it's kind of interesting linguistically that tikva's root word is kava, and that literally means to bind together, like what you see in a rope, and it means to wait. So I don't know about you, but one of the things that is very big in me when I hope is the wait. There is always waiting in hoping, right? They sort of connect together. And while hope in English is a little bit more abstract, Nicole, so great for you to join us from Costa Rica. Hey, Andy and Lisa, great to see you. Good to have you with us. So while hope in English is sort of abstract, hope in Hebrew provides us with a very concrete, tangible image, a bound cord or rope. It's not only seen with our eyes, but it's something that we can literally grasp a hold of with our hands. Isn't that amazing that this word for hope is also the word for rope? And a rope not only we can hold on to, but it can hold us. So when studying scripture, one of the things that you probably heard me say many, many times is one of the ways to look at words and their meanings is what's called the principle of first mention. And it's a really important tool in understanding the meaning of words. So what we have to ask ourselves is, when was this word first seen in scriptures? Because the first time it's mentioned in scriptures, all the other times it's mentioned is going to be connected to that time. And the Hebrew word tikva is first seen in, and by the way, when I say the principle of first mention, I'm talking about the Hebrew word, not the English word, the Hebrew word. The Hebrew word tikva is first seen in the book of Yehoshua, or as we say, Joshua, as the Israelites are preparing to take the land of Jericho, or Jericho. He sends 2 men to scope out the city. And the king of Jericho hears that these 2 men are in his town, and he sends his men to set out and kill them. So the 2 men that Joshua set out, who set out to do reconnaissance in the city, they hide in the home of Rachav, or how we say Rahab. And Rachav is a Gentile woman. She's not an Israelite. She's not a follower of Yahweh. And she is, in one way or the other, involved in a house of prostitution. Now, there's a lot of commentators that try to sugarcoat all this and make it seem a little bit nicer. But hey, this was a house of prostitution, and she was either a madam or a prostitute herself, or both. But they come to her, and by the way, I love that that's who she is, because the Bible is filled with messy human stories, just like us. It's why we can relate to it. So they come to her, these 2 spies, and she hides them on her roof under some big flax stalks. And then they're able to climb down from her house using this rope that she gives them, because her house, actually, the wall was part of the city wall. So they climb down this rope, they sneak out of the city as she instructs them, and they hide for a few days until the men who were looking for them give up and turn back. But before she hides them and tells them how to escape, she says, "Hey, I'm about to save you. Now you need to save me, because I recognize what's happening now. I see God's hand on you and your people. I know that our city is about to be overtaken by you. I want you to save me and my whole household." And she says, in exchange for the protection. So the men say to her in Joshua 2, 17 through 18, the men say, "You tie this piece of scarlet cord in your window that you let us down from, and you gather together in your household, your father, your mother, your brothers, and your father's entire household." And so Rahab affixes this scarlet tikva, again, the word for rope, the same word for hope, and she hangs it out her window as a sign. And you remember we said that the sign, tav, is in the actual word, a sign of a covenant. And by the way, a red marker was used on the outside of a house somewhere else as a sign of the covenant and brought protection as well. Do you remember what that is? If you just kind of write that in the comments, do you remember that story? So what a dramatic image here. But Rahab still has to wait for the realization of the spy's promise of salvation. And this is actually where the root, tikva, kava, wait, becomes relevant. We often forget that hope is rooted in waiting. And we see numerous examples of biblical heroes that maybe had faith in God, maybe had faith in his words, but they really struggled with that waiting bit. Everyone from Abraham and Sarah to the Talmudim, the disciples of Yeshua. So the real question is, how do we cling to hope and wait? Hey, Barika, great to see you. And there we go. Ding, ding, ding. We got a winner. Passover. Exactly right, Barika. That's another time that we make that connection, that it's the red and it's on the side of the house and it's a sign of covenant. So I would like for you to do this for me, please, this evening. I'm going to go through 3 components that have to do with hope. And you may be able to think of a lot more, but we're going to talk about 3 tonight. And I'm going to ask that you give me a thumbs up if these things resonate with you. And then I'm going to ask you to also share in the comments about what really works in your life that you connect to. What things sustain you in hope. Because this is really a communal journey here. We learn together, and you may be able to have found something that really works that you would like to share. But let me know if these things really resonate with you that we're going to talk through tonight. So the first thing is hope is not to deny, but to defy. And sometimes we think that when we talk about hope, we talk about that there's optimistic people that just sort of have their heads above everybody else, that aren't connected with reality at all, that are detached from everything that may bring them down. But although you can be an optimist and be hopeful, this is not what I'm talking about tonight, that sort of eternally optimistic person. Hope is to deny, but not to defy. So there is a part, hey, Rebecca, great to see you, Shabbat Shalom. There is a part of us that argues against hope. And that's the part that calls ourselves realists, right? This is a sort of clever counter against hope. Reality, as we see it, is so much more rationally appealing than hope sometimes, right? It's a kind of protection against being disappointed, and we sort of attach it to being an intellectual maybe. But in another story involving a reconnaissance in a city as well, found in Numbers 13, we read of Israel coming to the land of Canaan and Moshe sending 12 spies. But when the spies came back with their report, and they spoke of the abundance in the land, all the fruit and everything there, they also spoke of the giants, these big men who inhabited the land. And some even felt like they were the Nephilim, which is this sort of crossbreed between space aliens that were at one time mated with demons kind of thing. So there was all this folklore around them, but they were big dudes. That's all we know for sure. And so they came back telling about the fat of the land, but also the bigness, the giants of the people. And in Numbers 13:33, we read, we were like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we must have been in their eyes too. And notice this here about this. Loss of hope makes our challenges look bigger and makes us look smaller. Isn't that really interesting? When we lose our hope and we see through this. Hey, Derek, great to see you. Good to have you join us tonight. Oh, Ryan went right in there with that question. All of us are waiting to know. Okay, so loss of hope makes our challenges look bigger and us look smaller. So the people here that lost their hope saw the giants, but they also even projected how the giants would look at them, which is small. And when all the people heard this report, they became convinced that they didn't have the military might to prevail. And everyone falls into despair. And that night we read the people lifted up their voices and cried. And that particular expression is one the Torah uses in several places to convey hopelessness. And it is the sense that something is slipping away from you and will never come back. Now, the thing with hopelessness is that it relates to the past, the present, and the future in very disturbing ways. Hey, Carolina, good to see you, honey. Shabbat Shalom. Great to have you with us tonight. The past, the present, and future it sort of relates to them in unhealthy ways, hopelessness. So let me know if you experience this. The Israelites with Moshe, they wanted to return to Egypt because they said it was going to be far better for them to return. Now, listen, Egypt in the past was horrible. That's why they left. But in the hopeless mind's imagination, it begins this work to transform not the present, not the future, but the past. The past was so much better. It was so much better in Egypt. Let's go back. Then the present is almost experienced through this distorted view of the past. So listen, imagination and dreaming is a gift of Adonai. It is used literally to create. But listen to this, because this is huge. Hopeful imagination is constructive when it is directed towards the present and the future. It is destructive when it is used in a revisionist memory of the past. And we see that over and over and over and over again in our day, right? I have no possibility to change the past. The past is set, but the future has not yet come. And in this story, only Joshua and Caleb saw the whole picture through the hopeful, creative imagination. They did not deny the giants. They defied the power the giants had over them. They would not give them the final word. So they did not deny, they defied. Listen, here's another biggie for tonight, and I kind of want to hear your comments on how you relate to this. There was a hope filter they used to view this situation. Now, a filter, no matter what kind of filter we're talking about, doesn't remove the things and that they disappear. It's not magic. It simply separates them from what you either want to see or hear or taste. We need a hope filter. And this is how we need to relate to things. They didn't deny, they defied. And I don't know about you, but I need a hope filter for my social media and my news. Unfiltered, unverified negativity cannot have unfettered access to my heart and mind. So please comment about how you relate to that, how you have a filter with how you let things come in. What hope filters do you use? Because you need them. Whether it's when you read things or how you read things or what you read, we all need hope filters. It doesn't make the negative disappear. It separates it from what we want to know or see or feel or taste. Sociologist Peter Berger calls hope a signal of transcendence. Something that speaks to us from beyond where we are. That's beautiful. A signal of transcendence. Hope is alive. And it's okay if you don't feel it right now, because you can begin by having hope for hope. Hope for hope. Like a prism. More like a prism than a filter. Yeah, that's a good one. Hope prism, Ryan. That's good. It is more like a prism than a filter. It's how you view it. That's exactly right. Hope is alive. And you can begin by having hope for hope. Even if you don't have it yet. Even when there's no idea of where it's going to come from. You know it's out there. I was reading this really great story about a spiritual teacher who told his disciples that their ashram needed a certain amount of money because it was falling apart. It needed repair. And the disciples asked the spiritual teacher, where's the money going to come from? He responded, from wherever it is now. I love that. This is hope. You know that what you need is out there. What you're looking for is out there. You may not even know how it's going to get to you. You just know that it's going to come from wherever it is now. The beautiful thing about hope is this is actually something you can teach yourself. You can learn how to connect with hope, and you can do hope. I have the possibility, and you have the possibility, to imagine and create a future of hope. And that's a very encouraging thing. The second thing that we have to look at with hope, hope is cultivated through actions. And that is a really important part of it, because sometimes we just sort of wait for hope to just float in our life, and then our things that we're desiring just kind of come with them. Even if one can't feel hope, one can act hopefully. From the actions, feelings then emerge. Psychologists talk today, and we have more and more and more understanding about this. And for any of you who know me, you know I talk about this a lot, because it's a biblical truth that now science is able to prove with scans. We already knew it, but now it's irrefutable scientific fact. Psychologists talk about the phenomenon of neural pathways in the brain, and we often hear the phrase, what fires together wires together. So let's break this down as to how it relates to hope with us. Let's say that you're not feeling any hope at all. None, not a bit. You just feel nothing. Maybe you're depressed, maybe you're completely apathetic, but it's not hope. So let's say that you're not feeling hope, but you get around a person and you force yourself to connect to that person and to smile as you speak to that person. And then when that person sees that smile and feels that connection, they smile back. They connect back. And maybe they give you a big old Julie hug. Because we all know we got two amazing huggers. We got Julie and we got Siobhan. We got the rest of y'all too, but those two, unbelievable hugs. And then these hormones come when you have that hug. Hormones like oxytocin, which by the way is the high in MDMA. The reason why people take MDMA is because it makes oxytocin, and oxytocin is also what a hug makes. Oxytocin floods your body along with stimulating dopamine and serotonin, these feel-good hormones as well. And wow, did that feel good. So your brain says, okay, I like it. I think you want me to do this some more, so I'm going to do it again. And then here's what you do. Once you do hope, then you celebrate that. You celebrate what just happened. You celebrate that experience there. And then you look for other hopeful things to celebrate. Because what gets celebrated gets repeated. Derek's asking, how do we make hope dangerous? Because we can hope for the things, yet we don't get what we want all the time. How do you stay positive after instances like that? That's a really, really good question, Derek. And I didn't even get into that tonight. That's a really good question. But hope is almost a thing that becomes detached from a concrete, tangible event or thing. It becomes its own thing that you live out of. And so it's not connected to an event, in other words. It's not connected to a noun. It can be, but it is independent of things. And when it's independent of things, it has its own life. It has its own existence. And we have it in us, and we live with it in us. So that's how we can deal with disappointment. And that takes practice, Derek. So what gets celebrated gets repeated. So you're going to look for things to celebrate throughout the day, all through the day. Little things, big things, people that do good things in the world, you're looking for things to celebrate. And then this action with its reward becomes a behavior that becomes a habit. Listen, let me say this again. Then this action with its reward becomes a behavior that becomes a habit. Then the habit becomes part of your personality. And you live in hope. And you share that hope with everyone around you. And then, Derek, people will say to you, there goes Derek, what a hopeful guy. I need to talk to him. Because what happened was you had an action which became a behavior, which became a habit, which became part of your personality. And this is not new. 800 years ago, the Sefer HaChanukah, which is called the Book of Education, and it discusses the 613 commandments, made this very important part. I'm not going to say it in Hebrew. In English, it says, actions shape character. They shape the heart. Our culture tells you believe it, understand it, then believe it and feel it first, and then do it. No. Actions shape character. You become like what you do. This is ancient wisdom. It's why the Israelites at Mount Sinai told Moshe about the laws that were given to them. And by the way, this is the first time they even heard of the laws, the first time they were really connecting with Yahweh. They said this phrase, Na'aseh v'nishma, which is translated, we will do and we will hear and understand. Notice they say, we will do it first and then we will understand it. There is a work in hope that brings hope. And that is really an important component to hope. And then we see hope is supported through community. Hope is supported through community. This is really important because we will never just be able to kind of find and live out hope on our own. So let's go back to Rahab and the spies. Let's go back and kind of figure out what's happening with Rahab and the spies. Nicole's saying it's timely for her. Good, baby. And filter. Good. It's all in the prism. Ryan likes prism. I like that too. Hope is supported through community. So with Rahab and the spies, we'll go back to the first story. Joshua 2:22 through 24 tells us they left Rahab's and they hid in the hills for 3 days. So the two men, they hide, they climb down the wall, they go into the hills where Rahab tells them to go. They hid from all the people that were looking to kill him, to kill the two men. Then the two men, when they knew the coast was clear, returned, and they come to Joshua, the son of Nun, the text says, and reported everything that had happened to them. And then listen to what they say to Joshua. These two men that just had to hide for their life, okay, that had to crawl down the side of a building on a cord, that had to hide in the bush somewhere for 3 days, and they report everything that happened. Remember, they didn't deny, they defied. And now here's what they say. Truly, Adonai has handed over all the land to us, they told Joshua. Everyone in the land is terrified that we're coming. So they relate to all these dudes that are trying to kill them, not like it wasn't real, but they were so intimidated by them that they were trying to kill them. That's an example of hope. And now they march in together to Jericho like they're already victorious. And Rahab and her family were saved. And listen, Rahab, this Gentile who was part of this communal act and work of hope, Rahab was the mother of Boaz. She became the mother of Boaz. And Boaz married Ruth, if you remember, who was in the lineage of Yeshua. So here is Rahab, this Gentile, either prostitute or a madam, who decides that she's going to step in and be part of hope, part of the community of hope, and save these two guys' lives. And she becomes part of the lineage of Yeshua the Messiah. Hope was supported in every way through community. Like Rabbi Abraham Heschel, walking arm in arm in support with Dr. Martin Luther King, as they, like the Rabbi Heschel said, prayed with their feet. In other words, they marched together, and that's how they prayed, by their feet. And they imparted hope to others. So we have to know that this communal element is very, very important with creating hope. Let me see what else you have. Randall says, if I begin reading or listening to something or someone else, that is or who is way outside of my value system, then I terminate my participation in such mental or emotional drudgery. So what Randall is saying here is he checks out, he discontinues the conversation if they are not edifying to him. Jean is Jean, hey Jean, good to see you, says, and pray hopefully it is praying with the expectation that God is moving and will move. Absolutely, Jean. And when we pray for good, we know that we're always going to be in line with the Lord, even if it's not in the exact same way. The Lord will surprise us. Randall says, hope in English speaks of a possibility, whereas in Hebrew it speaks of an unbridled certainty. Absolutely. That's a good thought. Good thought, Randall, as always. So hope, as we see here, is what we cultivate together in the radical acceptance of how things really are without giving those realities the last word. And again, we're not denying them, we're simply defying them. Hope is what we cultivate together in the radical acceptance of how things really are without giving those realities the last word. And remember, hope is present and future based. Michelle Obama puts it this way: don't underestimate the importance you can have, for history has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own. And Derek, that's exactly what I was talking about with hope being its own entity. Hope can take on a life of its own. That's absolutely a true truth. Anita says, action shapes character, character shapes the heart. Absolutely. Good, Anita. Absolutely. Hope lives and works in the now, seeing something past the realities of the present, and we can learn to hope. We can use a hope filter, and we can do hope together. Jeremiah 29:11, the best, most encouraging verse when it comes to this. It says, this is the Lord speaking. He's speaking to Jeremiah through Jeremiah, but it's for the people that he loves. For I know what plans I have in mind for you, says Adonai. Plans for well-being, not for bad things, so that you can have hope. That's the word tikva, and a future. So continue to let me know what works for you with hope. Let's walk through hope together because we need it to be strong and fight the good fight. Shabbat Shalom. I love you.